Welcome to SAM Conversation, a program of South Asia Monitor. We are here to discuss the future of India-Bangladesh relations after 6 months of the Yunus government. It is our pleasure to welcome Lieutenant General Kamal Davar, old veteran of the 1965 and 1971 India-Pakistan wars. He was the founding director of the Defense Intelligence Agency and is the president of the Delhi Forum for Strategic Studies. It is now over 6 months that the India-friendly Awami League in Bangladesh was violently brought down. Its leader, Sheikh Hasina, had to leave Bangladesh in a great hurry. And that is despite her being, despite the Bangladesh Army Chief, General Waqar-uz-Zaman, being married to her cousin, being married to Sheikh Hasina's cousin. And despite Sheikh Hasina requesting the General Waqar-uz-Zaman to intervene, it did not do so. The Bangladesh Army did not intervene then because of reportedly pressure from the US. However, there's breaking news now, literally, just as we've started this program, that the Bangladesh Army Chief is very upset with Muhammad Yunus and his regime over law and order and over Pakistan's meddling. The ISI, Pakistan's ISI chief, visited Dhaka but did not meet General Waqar-uz-Zaman, met instead Lieutenant General Muhammad Faizur Rahman, the Quartermaster General. And the senior leadership of the Bangladesh Army is rather unhappy about the way General Waqar-uz-Zaman is being is attempted to be sidelined. If this be so, take it as a positive. And if this has just come, this is absolutely news which has come a few minutes ago on the TV tickers. Otherwise, Muhammad Yunus, who took charge, a Bangladeshi economist and reported to be close to George Soros, the Clintons, and the Obamas, assumed charge as chief advisor of the interim government of Bangladesh since 8 August 2024. In December 2024, the Ministry of External Affairs reportedly revealed that there were as many as 2,200 cases of violence against Hindus in Bangladesh. Large number of houses and temples have been reported to be destroyed. Matters have been taken up by the Ministry of External Affairs, but the response has been based on utter lies. There are also reports of destruction of Buddhist temples and churches. While Mr. Donald Trump has denied the US deep state's role in Bangladesh, there are many reports in the media which elaborate on the persons and connections related. And Mr. Trump's statement, I leave that to Mr. Modi, is suggestive of maybe, that there's that he has perhaps unofficially another view of it. There's also news reports of the Trump administration aiming to dismantle the US's extremist network. Another report which has been, news report which has been going around is Mr. Yunus in Dhaka or is he missing? Or is he planning to flee or has fled? While Bangladesh got liberated on 16th December 1971, its leader Bangabandhu Mujibur Rahman was murdered on 15th August 1975. So, and he was murdered by a group of Bangladesh army officers who were then loyal to Pakistan. Without delving more, I'll start by asking Gen Davar sir, the first question is, during the Bangladesh Nationalist Party's rule, Pakistan and Pakistan's ISI had a very, very major presence in Bangladesh. And one of the very major tasks of theirs was to destabilize India's northeast. They worked hard at doing that. After Sheikh Hasina returned to power in 2009, there was a tremendous improvement in India-Bangladesh relations, with Sheikh Hasina, completely turning the tide for these relations to take a very positive turn between India and Bangladesh. Now, ISI is trying its best to enter Bangladesh again, which does not, not very good for India, certainly. What do you think should be done, sir?
Right. Thank you, Team South Asia Monitor and Colonel Anil Bhat, for getting me to share my views on the worsening India-Bangladesh relations, which is, I think, the major theme of your discussions this evening. Today is also Shivratri, so I would like to proffer my greetings to all people all over the world, especially to the Hindus or the minority community in Bangladesh who are suffering for no rhyme or reason. Now, coming back to your question about the int agencies operating in the in our northeast and all that, and the ISI expanding its footprint in Bangladesh. We all talk about the ISI, but Bangladesh has primarily two major int agencies. I just want to name them: the National Security Intelligence, which reports directly to the Prime Minister, and is their largest int agency, responsible for internal security, counter-terrorism, counterintelligence, and so on and so forth. The important one, as far as we are concerned, the armed forces and otherwise too, is the Directorate General of Forces Intelligence, which indulges in external affairs intelligence and liaison. It is really the Defense Intelligence Agency of Pakistan. Of course, there are others. There's no need to talk about them much. Now, suffice is to say that the DGFI, in particular, has maintained close relations even after the independence of Bangladesh with the ISI. Very close relations. This is one area where we should have been far more proactive in having closer relations with the int agencies of our neighboring countries. Now, Begum Khalida Zia, who you just mentioned, she who has been the Prime Minister of Bangladesh twice, and she was openly pro-Pakistan. The ISI had a field day during a tenure, and you have rightly stated that the ISI did their best to create problems in our northeast. They were liaising with some of the insurgent groups in our northeastern states. They're funding them. They're also giving them arms, ammunition, and whatever they could. And they also were a conduit of Chinese arms to come to some of these rebel tribal groups which were there in the northeast. And you would have noticed that in the last few months, there has been a flurry of visits by Bangladesh and Pakistani officers to each other's countries. Naturally, after a wait of 15 years, when Begum Sheikh Hasina was in power, much of the nefarious activities of the ISI was in check. So now the ISI is back in business. Now, what is happening? Trade relations between Pakistan and Bangladesh, which had, finished after 1971, that is, I'm talking of the direct trade. Now, a few days back, or I think a fortnight back, a Pakistani ship docked at Cox's Bazar, and Bangladesh, amazingly, has waived the role of inspection of the goods coming in to their country. So now you can imagine what all the ISI can send without any inspection being done. Earlier on, when it was coming via Philippines or Malaysia or Indonesia, the countries of those, the customs of those countries would inspect, and then the stuff would come to Bangladesh. Fine, as is the acceptable norm. But now the ISI has been given a free hand. Now you ask me, what should we do? Very important question. India must convey it at the highest level, political, and before that, military and security forces like the BD and the BSF and things like that, officially and the diplomatic level, that India will not tolerate any machinations against it by the ISI, DGFI combined. Now, any agent of theirs caught in our nation, whether in Kolkata or Tripura or anywhere in West Bengal, will be dealt with very seriously. Secondly, we should also carve out our areas of influence in the Bangladesh agencies. I don't want to elaborate further because that will be then going into the realm of security. Thirdly, we can also use the good offices of some of the intelligence agencies of some friendly foreign countries. I don't wish to name them. You see, no border mischief, very importantly, no border mischief right from now of theirs will be tolerated, and this we should make it amply clear. We don't do anything illegal or wrong, sending people across or smuggling anything across to Bangladesh and things like that. So they should be told that, look, old boys, let's be reciprocal in our regard for each other. So what I want to mention to you overall is that we have to recast, realign, rather re-energize our int efforts towards the int agencies of our neighbors, and also send a message, appropriate messages at the political level, at the military level, at the border security management level to our counterparts across in Bangladesh. And anything which they do after having been told, after having been warned politely or whichever way, then I am afraid some form of contingency planning should be done to, teach them a lesson.
Thank you, sir. In fact, if your mention of of how we should be at the border, very recently, the Border Security Force had its meeting with the Bangladesh Rangers, and it was conducted with in quite a cordial manner, and there were some points of difference that came up, but it was agreed upon that they will try to keep this border as peaceful and event free as possible. And some months ago, even the two armies, which used to be for 53 years since 1971, every December would be, getting together to celebrate Bangladesh's liberation.
Absolutely.
That meeting was also held a bit hurriedly in December 2024, but it was held. And the fact that as per the latest news which I mentioned, that General Waqar is not, he and his senior leaders of the Bangladesh army are not very happy with the intervention of the ISI. That is, I think, is kind of a silver lining. However, there's nothing which we can take for granted. And
I just wanted to intervene here for a minute. There have
Sir,
been some
please,
reports. There have been some
please.
reports about this since we were talking about the ISI. Then some reports that we have intercepted. These are media reports, of course, that we have intercepted some radio signals coming from Bangladesh side
Yes,
towards
yes,
towards India. Maybe they've got some sleeper cells already in place, and these messages are in in Bengali, Arabic, Urdu. So maybe these guys are trying to, reactivate their sleeper cells or send instructions. So we have to be very careful on this aspect.
sir.
And you very correctly said we had this annual 4 day meeting between the DGBSF and the DGBD. And I'm sure a lot of things would have been thrashed out. And they should be told, "Okay, look, boys, you are a sovereign nation. We respect your sovereignty and all that. So let's remain like good neighbors and proceed. Otherwise, things will be difficult for you." Yeah.
Um, Certainly, sir. So the next question I have, sir, is that do you think India should try to work on Mr. Donald Trump to undo what's happened in Bangladesh and get the Awami League back in power?
Well,
I don't think this is sort of impossible at all. Um, it's a different matter how much how much of how much the US opens its cards, how much Mr. Donald Trump uh, allows to be known. Um, Sir,
your question has two aspects to it. The first regards US involvement in sorting out matters in Bangladesh, and secondly, how does India get Awami League back in power? I'm afraid much that we'd like matters in Bangladesh to go back to the August pre-August 2024 scenario. I'm afraid these questions of yours border to some extent on the undiplomatic and convey some form of interference in the nation's internal affairs. Let me be very, but we should, what I agree with you, but we should strive in a diplomatically acceptable format. Now, the United States can play a major role using its economic power and the influence it uses in international monetary institutions. Bangladesh would naturally not like to be ostracized. It cannot afford to. I'm sure it is prudent enough to know that all those nations, we must re-emphasize to Bangladesh, and I'm sure they would know that those nations who put all their eggs in the Chinese basket have been driven to economic debts and woes of a very gigantic nature. Why I mentioned this was because China is waiting in the wings. They've already taken off in the sense trying to influence Bangladesh, even during Sheikh Hasina's time and all that. But as you correctly sort of alluded to, the US can use its enormous economic clout apart from diplomatic counseling behind the scenes. Of course, China will do its utmost to make Bangladesh also another vassal country like it has done to Pakistan. Now, one of the things is that the US aid, as you know, which has been in the news about funding to sub-Saharan Africa and South Asian nations and all that, $29 million are supposed to have gone to Bangladesh for, ostensibly for charitable purposes and things like that. And I also like to mention in this here that most of this aid was also being used for Rohingya refugees who are staying in, Cox's Bazar. Some figures are 25 lakhs, which I don't believe that, but they're staying in camps and all. In the last few days, the Rohingyas are up in arms because they've not got food and all that, because the Bangladesh government also must be feeling the pinch now of feeding such a large number of refugees. Also, we have to remember that as for the Rohingyas are concerned, since they are out of work, out of, in poverty and hunger and all that, the ISI would love to recruit some of them to carry out nefarious activities within Bangladesh and across the border. But as far as you see, our behind the scenes diplomacy must be very important, and we have to convey to them that your minorities, it's not only Hindus, it's also the Buddhists, it's also the Christians. If they continue to suffer, I'm afraid we may have to indulge in some arms twisting. You see, Bangladesh is dependent on us for many items. lots of food items also, and importantly for power and a lot of specialized medical treatment. Some of these Bangladeshis people come to Calcutta. They know that their day-to-day life of their entire population will be affected, and no amount of Chinese assistance can replace Indian assistance. But we have to tackle them politically also, and I would very humbly suggest that their interim head of government, Muhammad Yunus, and their army chief should be invited. They should call on our prime minister, and things can be sorted out. Also, at least we can try. Now, if the Bangladesh government remains vis-a-vis India in the same manner, I'm afraid we'll have to take some stern steps economically and others too, which are best not discussed in open forums like this. Now, before that, our readiness, or I would say not readiness, our red lines, I beg your pardon. Our red lines should be made amply clear to the Bangladesh government, the UN, and other international agencies like the UK, France, Germany, Italy, and importantly, nations from Asia itself, like Vietnam, Japan, Indonesia, Philippines. They also must be persuaded to pitch in to ensure Bangladesh endeavors to be a democracy and does not jump totally into the Chinese lap. And as I mentioned to you, $29 million of US aid has already been stopped by the newly elected American President Donald Trump. So that's going to pinch them a lot. And I'm sure it'll give them some thought to consider, that not to go along, the path of terrorism or, fundamentalism or extremism, as Pakistan has done. And they know the example of Pakistan, that how Pakistan and its poor population is suffering. Do they want to face the same fate? It's entirely up to them.
Thank you, sir. Now, although there are reports of Muhammad Yunus being very apprehensive about Mr. Donald Trump, and some reports even said talk about his plans to flee or already fled. But the fact remains that the amount of uncertainty is such that I don't think we can afford to take for granted that this border between Bangladesh and India can be managed purely the way it has been done so far. Do you think there is a need to increase the strength of the army to be able to, because we already have a 1.1 or 2 million army, which is looking after two fronts, China and Pakistan. To whatever extent this can be discussed, but I think you feel that we need to increase the size of the Indian Army, sir?
For years, we all have spoken of our 2.5 front threat for India. And the nation has made efforts to counter the challenges from China and Pakistan, both individually and collectively. Now, we also have to manage an internal security threat to the nation. Now, with the internal security challenges reasonably in control now, I would say well in control by now, but the Chinese and the Pakistani threat existing, an inimical neighbor on our eastern border, let's say Bangladesh unfortunately graduates to that, will certainly raise the stakes for the Indian Armed Forces. Now we'll have to look towards confronting a three-front challenge. Now I'm sure the Chief of the Defense Staff and our service chiefs and the government would have surely wargamed the new threat challenges and carry out contingency planning to thwart any such threats. All Bangladesh has to learn is that all the progress it has made since its liberation in December 1971 will evaporate if it tries under Pakistani or Chinese persuasions to needle India militarily. This should be made also clear to Bangladesh. Bangladesh has to ensure that they look after their minorities and do not unnecessarily inflict violence on them. Bangladesh should also be forewarned appropriately, as I had mentioned again, at the highest political level, that Indian aid to them since its independence has been no strings attached, and India does not covet any inch, even an inch of its territory, and wishes it to grow into a secular democratic republic and growth-oriented neighbor of ours, as was envisioned by its founder liberator, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. We should once again remind them that they should never forget their history when millions of then East Pakistanis were murdered, lakhs of their women raped by their erstwhile fellow citizens from West Pakistan. It was the Indian army which suffered over 3,000 dead and many more were wounded to make them free, along with, of course, their Mukti Bahini. We should develop fraternal and mutually beneficial relations as thought of by the two great leaders, their Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and the indomitable Indira Gandhi, who was then our Prime Minister. Even today, the government of India and all of us in India wish them well. They must be reminded that all governments, which I think alluded to earlier, who fall a prey to radicalism, fundamentalism, and extremism in the long run, drown their nation into misery and poverty. So, see, and they should be reminded to see what is happening in Gaza. Hamas, what has Hamas done to their fellow Palestinians? The whole of this beautiful Gaza Strip, which had over 2 lakh people, has been, finished, razed to the ground. 50,000 casualties, people dead. So this is a point which we must keep hammering to them, and also reach out to the Bangladeshi public and tell them that all this will happen in case you follow the fundamentalist path. So you're right, this challenge on our eastern front, where a third front has emerged, calls for a build up for the Indian armed forces. Now, and I would like to say that we have challenging times ahead, and 2025, I feel, will be the forerunner of the future of India Bangladesh relations. Let's hope Bangladesh, as I said, also feels similarly for their own good and good of the region.
Thank you, sir. I think we covered a very almost all important aspects. If there's anything more you'd like to add, sir, briefly.
No, as I said, we have to there must be behind the scenes diplomacy. We also must tell them that we respect your sovereignty, we respect your independence, we respect whichever way you want to go, but anything which will affect us militarily, socially, politically, economically, that will not be tolerated at all. And some of the other, we should try and wean them away from the evil and sinister influence of the Pakistanis. As you know, there is in Pakistan also and from Afghanistan onwards, this Islamic State in Khorasan province, the ISIK, they've also got, they're trying to expand their footprint, and they want now Muhammad Yunus is also supposed to be working towards an Islamic Republic of Bangladesh. Fine, but if they get into their web of the fundamentalism which is spearheaded by ISIK, it will not be good for the region at all. It will be unnecessarily, misery and violence and instability which will come if they follow the fundamentalist path, as it appears Pakistan is pushing them to, and the Chinese also perhaps are wanting to have the last laugh in this area. We have to be very, very careful.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much. Good night. Jai Hind.